This blanket was on the patent application for number knitting by Virginia Woods Bellamy. She submitted the patent in 1946. It was patented in 1948. And her book, Number Knitting, was the compilation of her correspondence courses all about modular garter stitch knitting. And the book was published in 1952. This particular blanket was in the book, but the chart wasn't in the book. The chart was in the patent application. So I want to show you today how this blanket was made and why it is so crazy. So you're probably familiar with the idea of a mitered square. Cast on your number of stitches, and then you work back and forth, decreasing in the center with a double decrease. The whole thing is worked in garter stitch. But what's really interesting about this particular design is that most garter stitch mitered square patterns, the diagonals all run in the same direction. But with this, the diagonals run in different directions. But you can accomplish this all without breaking the yarn. So let's see how she did it. According to the chart on the patent, this is where you start your blanket. For perspective, that's in the center of the blanket, and that's where she starts this pattern. Not in the bottom, not on the side, not in the corner. She starts right in the center. So here's how it's worked. Work a mitered square, partway through, throw in a butterfly, but you're still working a single unit here. You can work this butterfly using intarsia. Once you get to the end of your mitered square, you work the next unit. In this case, it's not a mitered square, it's a rectangle until you get to here. Then you work the mitered square. And then pick up along the edge, and you work what she calls an adapted unit. Part of it is a mitered square, like if you were to look at just this section, but part of it is a rectangle. So you would pick up probably 2 times the amount of stitches here, pick up some stitches here, and work this part as a mitered square using intarsia. And then once you get to the end of the black, you just work the rest of it and bind off in the blue. Okay, so we've got one unit, we've got the second unit here, and then you pick up from the side. This is unit 3. So you work a rectangle for a while, and then start to work a mitered square adapted shape in the form of a butterfly. And then this is the 4th unit. Picking up, working your mitered square. And so you know now, notice that we're right next to the original unit. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're gonna go 5. So this whole blanket is worked concentrically. So this is 6, and then we get over here, and because this is part of a sheep, you need to do some adapted units here. Now she doesn't give any instructions about how to work these at opposing angles. She just drew the chart, and you're left to figure it out for yourself. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because again, it's worked concentrically. Go here at 8, work your divided square, and then here to number 9. Now for a lot of these units, you can pick up from the edges of 2 existing units. But over here, this is unit 10. There's nothing on the side here to pick up from. So what she has you do is cast on your stitches, knit back, and then pick up. So sometimes when you work a mitered square, you do have to cast on 1/2 of it. This is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And notice how the angle of the diagonals is shifted again because you're working downward. And so in the lower left corner of the blanket, the diagonals are going to be generally pointing downward. And so the angle of those diagonals, it kind of follows the direction of your knitting when you're working concentrically. And so you just work around and round and round. Now there's three things about this blanket that are really, really interesting to me. The first is the idea of mitered squares. If you've made a scrappy memory blanket, you're pretty familiar with that idea. But then what she does that I haven't seen anyone else do is she puts them at different angles to each other. And she does that by working concentrically. But the third thing that she does that's really interesting, that again, I've never seen anyone else do, is that she puts pictures in her mitered square blankets. Because this whole thing was charted on graph paper, and as you can see here in this square, you can see that it's based on like a 3-square grid. And so she would have charted this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 larger squares, each one of them composing 3 smaller squares. You can have a grid pattern, 21 squares wide, and within that grid you can draw your pictures. She even added grass at the bottom. Amazing. You can find this patent if you search for number knitting in Google Patents. The pattern is in there. I think it's on page 5 of the patent, and it also explains in that document all the intricacies of number knitting and what makes it so distinctive and why she was able to get a form of hand knitting patented.